So we are going to get started now. This is our presentation about the Guidestar database. As I mentioned, we'll just give the brief little talk about Forefront in case anyone out there is not completely familiar. Forefront is a membership organization for nonprofits, grant makers, advisors, and other allies across the state of Illinois. We do things like education, advocacy, and other kinds of facilitation for our members and the issues that are important to them and the nonprofit sector. For the library, that frequently revolves around both this kind of educational presentation as well as research for our members. The library, we are what is known in official library jargon as the special library, which means our collection is specialized, focused in our case, of course, on the nonprofit sector. We are also part of Candid's Funding Information Network. Candid is the parent organization of Guidestar, the database that we're going to be talking about today, as well as Foundation Directory Online, which many people have probably heard a little bit about. They have a site called Candid Learning, where you can find some sample documents and plenty of other resources as well. The slide that's currently up has the library's URL on it. Also has one of Candid's sites in case you are outside the Chicago area. If you're interested in using some of the resources like FDO or Guidestar, finding another another Funding Information Network organization could be helpful to you if there's going to be somebody closer to you. There may be if you are a little farther away from Forefront. And of course, we are currently physically closed. So while we are still doing remote research for members, we are not at this point welcoming guests into the library. So if you want to find somebody who has physically opened up again, that also may be a very useful thing for you as well. All right, so this webinar, I'm going to explain what Guidestar is, talk about creating an account and claiming your organization's profile, earning the badges of transparency that you can get by updating your organization's profile with certain information, talk about the charitable partners who access information through Guidestar, and researching people in Guidestar. That part, I will actually just kind of go into a hands-on kind of demonstration. So you'll just kind of see me using the database here on screen. All right, but first up, what is Guidestar? So Guidestar, as I'm going to be using it for this presentation, is the name of the database. It was also the name of the company who created the database. However, a couple of years ago, the company merged with the Foundation Center, and they created an organization called Candid that is now the parent organization for everything that the Foundation Center did, including things like Foundation Directory Online and GrantSpace, which is now the Candid Learning website, as well as Guidestar, including the Guidestar database, Guidestar's compensation survey that they create with some of the data from their database, and anything else that either of the organizations have been doing prior. So for the database, it is a repository of information on basically every nonprofit that is registered with the IRS tax exempt. If you have filed a 990, you have almost certainly a bare bones profile in Guidestar, whether you have ever looked at it or not. It also has data on former nonprofits. It does not remove records if organizations have had their nonprofit status revoked for any reason. So you can also still see organizations historically in that fashion. You can also filter them out to make sure you're not looking at organizations who are no longer current when you do searches. I'll show you that when we go into the database. Also has information on organizations that are recognized by the IRS exempt but don't have to register, such as faith-based organizations. Now, if you are with a faith-based organization that is not officially registered, you may have to actually send Guidestar documentation to get your organization in there. Without the kind of 990 tax forms, there's not really a mechanism for them to be able to automatically create the kind of basic profile they do for most organizations. So you may have to take a step to have them include your organization, but they are more than happy to do so. They obtain this information from nonprofits themselves through the process we're going to talk about here about claiming and updating your profile. Or as I mentioned, for some organizations who do not already have profiles in there, through submitting some of that information to get started, as well as the federal government, generally through a lot of the kind of IRS information and other partners in the nonprofit sector. Right, so kind of a why should you care, or why should you be interested in dealing with your profile at all? Updating your profile is a great way to look at your sorry, I noticed a question and derailed my train of thought briefly. So having your profile, being able to do it like this is kind of one way to prove credibility. That's something we talk about in our introduction to finding grants. Is that it is a way to do that, because not only is the basic profile there that kind of has that basic, yep, this organization is registered with the IRS in the appropriate fashion. Here is basic tax documents. If you are updating and sharing kind of your story, it allows you to create a narrative that is out there for people to access. Chris had a question about funding. On the Guidestar website, they do have kind of a partners page that shows some of the organizations that help fund them. They are a nonprofit themselves, so they have a number of funders. So I wouldn't say there's one in particular. They also will be funded in part by their subscription fees, because while creating a basic free account is free, they do have professional subscription levels that include more information and more filters for your searching. So they are going to have kind of a mix of being funded through grants, as most nonprofits are, and as well as their kind of fees for their services, their kind of subscription fees for organizations that actually subscribe to the database. Forefront, for example, we have a subscription to Guidestar, so we pay our yearly fee to them. That's going to do whatever that little bit is to keep it up and going. Right, so as mentioned, it is free to create just a very basic account, and then you can claim your organization's profile and update that profile. You will be pretty limited on the amount of searching you can do and the number of filters you can use for that searching, but you can update your profile to the fullest of your availability for no cost there. So that is kind of the mix of how that goes. Now, nonprofit profiles on Guidestar can go beyond IRS data. They provide this opportunity to give kind of a publicly available picture of your organization and everything you do. We will pause at this moment because I did add a poll to this to see how familiar people were with Guidestar or not. There are 2 questions in this poll. So if you'll please just kind of let me know who's used it before and kind of if you're familiar with the idea of claiming and updating your organization's profile. I know I made the answer options on this a little wordier than they are frequently, so give people a minute or so to answer here. All right. We have most people have voted. A couple more to go. All right, seems like most people have probably looked at enough to have their own free account, which is good. So people have, some familiarity with it. Let's see. All right, so we will, looks like almost everybody voted. So I guess I will close that at this point so that you can see the results as well. Right, so you should be able to see the results of the poll at this point. About half of everybody on the call has a free account, which is great. So it means you've done at least some searching or some looking at things around or your profile. So that is good to know. Don't worry if you've never used it. This is supposed to be an introduction, so hopefully that will answer some questions there as well. All right, so, okay, everybody's at least familiar kind of with the idea, I guess I did just explain it. So I'm glad to know everyone was at least listening to me just explaining, talking about claiming your organization's profile. All right, great. So good to see kind of a split there on it as well. All right, so we'll close that and move on. All right, so the process of claiming your organization's profile to update it, to kind of make it into this platform for your organization. You're going to first request access. If you do not already have a free account, this will require making one. So that is pretty straightforward to do, and we'll look at a little bit about that on the next slide. But that is kind of the first step, is that you will be requesting access to your organization's profile. And in order to do that, you do need to have kind of your own account on the database. Step 2 is get approved, which honestly, from anybody on this call's point of view, is just going to be waiting. Because once you request access, Guidestar does need to then kind of verify your affiliation. They don't want just anybody being able to say, hey, yeah, I definitely work for the Ford Foundation. Let me update their profile. So they do need to kind of verify it. This process is a lot faster if you have an email that is associated with your organization. So if you have a work email that is clearly associated with the org, definitely try and make your account using that email, because it makes it a lot more straightforward for them to try to verify your affiliation. If you don't have one, that is not necessary. I'll talk about that a little bit more. So claim it, get approved, then you're going to be able to update it. We'll go a little more in depth about what that looks like here in just a bit. So claiming it, signing in or creating an account, first step. You'll see here what kind of the basic page for Guidestar looks like. You'll note that up in the top right, it says that you can sign in or create an account. If you're going to need to create one, you're going to, of course, click that yellow button. Like I said, verification might take a little longer at that point. You might be contacted by the publishers of the database requesting additional information, such as your organization's letter of determination or something, to just kind of prove that you do have access to it. Or they may ask for, a person who is senior at the organization to double check about that, so that they might be emailing, someone at your organization to just kind of verify your position. So, like I said, not having a work email does not make this impossible. It might, however, delay getting that approval email telling you that you do have an account, you have claimed the profile, and you can update it right now. Right. So if you are creating an account for the very first time, if you're clicking the yellow button there to create an account, it will ask you for that email, and then it will ask you for your organization. Now, I've been talking a little bit about if you don't have a work email, there is also a chance, if you search your org's name or its EIN, that it might not show up. While most tax-exempt organizations are going to have some kind of presence in Guidestar, it is not 100% comprehensive, especially if your organization is very new. If you are less than 6 months old, if you've not been around long enough to file a 990 sort of form, there's a very good chance you won't be in here. Again, as I mentioned earlier, faith-based organizations, if you're not filing 990s either, also may not be in here. However, if it is not, you can tell them, hey, my organization's not in here and I'd like it to be. Or if you are just doing this for yourself personally, if you are not doing this on behalf of an organization, you can skip this step and just make a personal free account. So if your organization is brand new, you can tell them that you have filed with the IRS. You can send in a copy of your letter of determination, and they will add the organization to it. They will contact you for any kind of information they need there as well. They generally want documents as PDFs, just because those are a little easier for a lot of things to deal with. So that is kind of that process. If there are kind of questions about that, we can talk about that a little more, but that is usually fairly straightforward, especially if your organization is already there, which is really the most likely scenario. Right. So now let's say you have made your account, you have been verified as being affiliated with your organization, you're good to go. That means that you can now click the button on Guidestar that says, claim your profile and get started now to update it. This is where you can tell your story to, that can be seen by potential donors. You will also receive emails telling you that your profile has been approved. You will also get emails about what seal of transparency you've earned if you have shared enough information for that as well. All right, so I've mentioned them a couple of times. Seals of transparency. When you go in and see your organization's profile, there will not be any kind of badge associated with to start with, if it's the kind of basic they created it version. If you claim it and then go to update it, you can earn one of these seals. Depending on how much you wish to kind of gamify things, you can share those, on the LinkedIn page for your organization. You can put them on, your website or profiles about that. Anything you kind of wish to do there. The different kind of levels are just emblematic of kind of the amount and type of information you share. The bronze level is extremely easy to share. Besides basic contact information about your organization and a mission statement is pretty much all you have to kind of share there to earn the basic level badge. Silver, you're going to share information about your programs and your brand, kind of your social media, presence and all of that if you have it. Gold is where you kind of share some of your audited financial statements if you have them, or 990 sort of information, kind of a little more explicitly, and information about staff. This is also where you can start sharing some diversity information. They've worked with a couple of partners on that to try to be able to show kind of organizations' commitment to diversity. And the platinum level is where you kind of share your strategic plan if you want, or any kind of evaluation metrics that you have that you want to share and kind of highlight the impact you're having in your area. Right, so we had a question about whether or not everybody should make an account. That is not necessary unless everyone in your organization is going to be using the database. So if you're going to be searching it, like I search this, not too irregularly doing requests for members. So with that, I of course need an account. I'm also the person who has updated the profile for our organization. So I also have named a couple of people as other folks who can also do that. So that when you claim the profile, you are able to also kind of name and share emails for other people who are going to have that same kind of editor permission to kind of ensure a be able to make sure that you're sharing kind of this in case of succession or any kind of information there. So I would generally recommend more than one person, just in case somebody leaves unexpectedly or there's something unexpected happens and you need back into the profile for any kind of reason. I guess, emergencies like that are probably pretty rare, but just as, redundancies are good. So I would generally recommend more than one person, but everyone does not need to have one unless they're really interested in searching it themselves. Now, if you're with an organization, I think one person said they were, that has a subscription, in that case, go in and poke around. You almost certainly have the ability to do so if your organization has a subscription themselves. So just look around and see what you can see. But if you're making free accounts and just claiming the organization's profile, then no, just make an account if you're going to be the one doing it, if you're the one who's kind of the backup for it, or if you're interested in searching the database yourself. That's really kind of the main reasons I think you'd be making one yourself. All right, so going into each of these seals a little more in depth. Excuse me just a moment. Sorry, excuse me. For a bronze seal, there are 4 details that are required in order to earn this basic seal. Contact information. You're going to tell them who is the person at your organization who can answer kind of basic questions about it. In our case, it's our director of communications. So you kind of give their name, their email, their title. Donation info. You can add a mailing address that tells people where you would want donations sent to if anybody were so inclined. If anybody came across your profile and wanted to, was really moved by the story you had shared and wanted to send you an anonymous check, you have shared an email, some sort of mailing address where mail can get picked up, checks can get picked up. Mission statement, sharing kind of the mission and the populations that you serve, to kind of just tell a little bit more about your organization and its goals broadly. And leadership info. Who is the head of your organization? What kind of contact information do you want to share about them? With ours, Monique's name is on there. Her LinkedIn profile URL is on there. We do not have her personal email on there. Hers is the kind of general information email for the organization shared instead. So you can also do that if you're not wanting to have individual personal emails. If you have kind of a general info box, you're certainly welcome to share that, as long as that is something that is definitely checked occasionally. But sharing those details gets you the bronze seal. And once you have a bronze seal transparency, you are able to place a donate button directly on the profile, so that anybody who comes across your profile, if it is, the advisors for a DAF, if it is individuals just trying to vet things a little bit, whoever can actually then donate virtually if your organization has that capability. We'll talk a little bit more about the donate button, how it works, after I go through all the seal levels. All right, so that's bronze. Silver. Funders generally want to know what you do. So this is really the best place, one of the best places to tell them, just in a kind of broad manner. So here you can enter your organization's key program details, including kind of geographic area served, population served. This helps kind of show any funders who do searching on these sites how you're kind of aligned. You can upload brand details, like your organization's logo or any kind of images you'd like to have on the profile, as well as taglines you use if you have kind of a slogan or something similar. If you have the website you want to share, social media links you want to share, any of that kind of information. So that is not every single one of those things I just named is required. It's usually just kind of a logo and at least one kind of internet-based thing. If you have a website, if you have a Twitter presence, if you have something along those lines. Those earn you a silver seal, just kind of together there. Gold seals. So this lets you leverage financial statements to kind of help funders, kind of form giving strategies looking at your organization. You can share an audited financial statement here. If you do not have one, and a lot of people do not, that is fine. You can also enter financial details that you can usually pull from your own 990, such as your annual revenue, your expenses, assets, liabilities. So you can enter that kind of information as you go there. This is also where you can, the other required part is information about your board. They do require at least like the board chair's name. So if you have, you can also enter the rest of your board's names if you have those, but the board chair is really the only part that is required. This is also where you can start to enter in demographic sort of data for kind of purposes of diversity and equity. So this section is interesting in part because while you do have to fill it out, you are not required to have the information because they are aware that not everybody collects this sort of information and not everyone is comfortable sharing some of this sort of information. So while these sections will ask, does your organization's leader identify, as a person of color? Do they have a disability? Are they part of the LGBTQ community? You do have the options to say, we do not collect this data, or it is not being shared. Those are options for each of it. However, like I said, you do have to go through those sections where it's going to ask about your organization's leader It will ask about your organization's board as a whole. So there it's percentages. It's not each individual board member. It'll ask you how many board members you have, and then how many of them identify in certain ways. And then for staff. If you have not done any of the kind of those surveys, but you would be interested in doing so, they also have a guide and a little template so that if you wanted to use the questions that would map directly onto how they ask you to share the information, you are, of course, welcome to use some of their tips and resources on collecting that information. So that is kind of what that is at the gold level, is sharing a little more about kind of financial information and sharing a little bit about your board. And if you have it and are comfortable sharing it, diversity information about your organization. All right, so platinum level. This is where you can share your organization's goals and strategies. You can use your annual report or prior grant applications if you're comfortable sharing those to share your goals and strategies. This can show donors that you're very well matched to them. Potential donors can rely on self-reported information to ensure that an organization is a good fit for them. You can upload a strategic plan in the additional documents section if you're going through platinum level steps. If you don't have a strategic plan or do not want to share a whole document that way, you can again fill in the goals, strategies, and progress information you have, perhaps from an annual report or from briefings you've given your board. This kind of gives a whole picture. It's also a place to show how you are impacting your community. There are different kinds of metrics. Some examples from profiles that are already in the database include number of donors or volunteers, total dollar amount of scholarships your organization awarded, area of land that you have helped be under sustainable cultivation, the number of animals you've helped rehabilitate, anything that's kind of those sorts of impacts. Frequently, if you are making reports to a board, you can pull this information from metrics that you have already given them. At least one recent metric is required for the Platinum Seal. You don't have to do anything across the board. You don't have to get super in depth, but you have to share at least one kind of metric here, so one kind of goal or strategy and one kind of evaluation point in order to earn that seal. Full disclosure, Forefront's current seal is gold, because I have not been able to pull all of the information together here. So again, it is fine to also stop wherever you are kind of comfortable there as well. You do not have to worry about going the whole way. I do not know if they have a file size limit for the materials you upload. I'm sure that probably says at the point where you would be uploading it if they do, but I do not know offhand. That is something that is not an answer I am currently familiar with. I will keep in mind to try to check that out. I will say that profiles you download from Guidestar are fairly large, so I kind of hope they are similarly generous on their upload size they allow from people. All right, so after you've claimed your profile, some of the benefits of having it kind of buffed out. You can showcase your impact, your organization. Guidestar is the source of information for over 200 charitable type sites. Amazon Smile, Facebook's platform for creating their little donation drives that individuals will often do for their birthdays, Network for Good, Fidelity Charitable. There are a number of kind of charitable sites that if they're ones where you can kind of create any kind of little platform of your own or do things individually, a lot of them pull their data from Guidestar. And a lot of them will then kind of limit what data they pull. Like they will only pull data from the ones who have badges. Because if they're wanting people to be able to send donations, then they need to make sure that you have the basic information required to mail you some kind of donation. And that is ensured if you have at least a bronze seal. So that is kind of frequently how that works. And another reason to at least claim your profile and do the basic level of information to get into at least a bronze level. You, of course, once you have any of the seals, can add a donate button directly to your profile. Again, next slide, we will talk about that even in more detail. There are some specifics about that I'm sure people are interested in if they have any curiosity about putting this on a profile on a different website. You, of course, now have a profile about your organization that you can use as a lovely little PDF handout if you wish. That's kind of a minor sort of perk, but a lot of them can look very pretty. And of course, this is a way to point to and celebrate the diversity of your staff, your board's demographics, and that sort of thing. In addition to those that are listed there, there's been research that organizations that have earned one of these seals of transparency do see a more than 50% increase in contributions. That is linked on GuideStar's website. So of course, I would take that possibly with a grain of salt for, potential, conflicts of interest. But that is certainly something to keep in mind there. These seals give funders insights into an organization. They let them make educated grant giving decisions. So we have seen people in the Forefront Library who have actually used GuideStar to search for organizations doing kind of particular work in their area. So it is definitely something that is used by people on the funding side of things. GuideStar has also found that profiles that have one of the gold or platinum seals get twice the views of other profiles, which again, once you see the database and how searching in it works, is pretty easy to kind of understand because it is very easy to filter by the kind of seal that your organization has. And there was a give.org report showing that a nonprofit's accomplishments are the #1 factor in establishing donor trust. The top reasons according to the report, the top reasons that inspired trust for charities' accomplishments, their reputation, and their financials, all of which can be pretty easily shared here. Part of the reason, I haven't spelled it out, but part of the reason to share things here as well, rather than relying on your own website, is that people like things to be easy. And GuideStar has tons of profiles for tons of different organizations all in one place. And so if, say, you're an advisor for a DAF and you were trying to find a list of organizations that, the person making the DAF wanted to kind of go over, going to one website where you can look through a whole ton of profiles is going to be a lot simpler than doing a bunch of different kind of web searching to try to find specific websites for a bunch of different organizations. So that is kind of one of the points in favor of aggregators generally. All right, so you will also, once you have a seal, they will give you code for embedding it anywhere. So if you wanted to have that little logo on, say, as I mentioned, LinkedIn page for your organization, somewhere on your own website, wherever you wanted to put it, to mention that you've done this, they will give you code so that you can easily do that. They also, since GuideStar is now a Candid product, you can easily sign up for a newsletter from Candid that will give you information about their trainings. They have a variety of trainings, some of which are free, some of which are not. So if you are interested in kind of their information as well, it's pretty easy to sign up for their newsletter through this as well. You will also get alerts related to your organization. So you will be emailed. Generally, it's whenever there's kind of a report received from the IRS that might affect your organization. If there was any kind of change in some of the reports the IRS keeps about nonprofit orgs, if it had somehow affected your organization, GuideStar would send the person who's on their list as being responsible for the profile a note about it. Hopefully, you would probably also find out another way as well, but at least, again, that's kind of a good backup. And they also have their own outreach toolkit. So if you wanted to brag about having earned your seal, they have templates for various social media type posts and a logo that you can download and use in any kind of print materials. So those are kind of the things that you can do with it afterwards. Now, as I mentioned a couple of times at this point, donate button. I'm sorry that looks pretty fuzzy. Apparently that image was smaller than I thought it was when I inserted it into that slide. So when you update your organization's profile and you go to publish it, if you have earned at least the bronze seal, you will then be asked these kind of questions here. So some of them are kind of the terms of the site that you're verifying that you are affiliated with the organization. You do have permission to share this kind of information, and you agree to the terms of use of the website. Then there's the donation permissions. You can tell it no or yes on allowing donors to give to your organization through GuideStar's partners. So if you didn't want to be listed in Amazon Smile, you could turn that off and have it not show you as a potential for those if that is not something you wanted to deal with. And then the other one is adding a donate button to your own GuideStar profile. If you do that, your logo on your GuideStar profile ends up looking like children's villages that I've circled over there on the right-hand side. You'll note that it has their name, their kind of little colored tagline, has their location, their website, and then that little yellow button, which you probably can't read off of your computer screen, but I promise you it says donate. That is what that ends up looking like, so that it is right there kind of at the top of your profile. Generally, updates show up within 24 hours. So if you don't see it immediately, do not worry until it's been about a day. Then you can contact their support and say, hey, something went wrong. Now, if you include that donate button, the people that GuideStar work with to handle the online donations are the Network for Good. So you can contact Network for Good directly. They have a website as well as an 800 number. You can also create a free account with them in order to do direct deposit instead of having checks mailed to you occasionally. That again is something that is up to any kind of individual organization, is not required in any way. There is a processing fee for these donations to be aware of. So Network for Good retains 4.75% as of the time I pulled this information off the GuideStar website from each donation for their processing costs. GuideStar does not take a percentage of the donation. Their partner does, they do not. Network for Good, again, has these Donate Now Lite accounts that you can set up for free so that you can see the donations that were made to your organization through them. You can see your history, any available donation details. You can also, again, apply to get things via direct deposit instead of a check. So that is kind of how all of that works. So there are two different versions of kind of donate permissions here. One is if you want a donate button on your GuideStar profile, just in case somebody happens to see your organization, really likes the story you told, and feels like dropping you a few bucks right then. That is handled through Network for Good, which you may or may not be interested in dealing with. If you are not set up where you want to try to handle keeping track of that information, that is perfectly fine. The other, of course, is whether or not you want to be in lists on things like, Facebook's platform when people create their donation drives for, anniversaries or whatever. If you don't want to be included, you can turn that off at this point before you publish your information. All right, so at this point, if we don't have any immediate questions, I'm going to switch what I'm sharing so that I can actually show you the GuideStar website. There we go. All right, so everyone should hopefully now be seeing the GuideStar website. So this is what it looks like if you are logged in. You'll note our account is up here. Again, if you're wanting at any time, if you want to change the information available for your GuideStar profile, if you got new information, you had a change in who your board chairman is, any of that, there's always this update your profile button right there. So it is pretty easy to do. Now, we do have a professional level subscription. So anything I am able to search is going to be a little more in-depth than what you can do with a free account. So just kind of keep that in mind. And again, if you are interested in searching things that are more in-depth, if you are part of a Forefront member organization, please feel free to email us in the library, and we will be happy to do searches and send you information ourselves. So that is one option for you if your organization is a member of Forefront. If you are not, you can check with libraries to see if they have access to the database. If they have, a nonprofit reference center, perhaps they have their own subscription. And of course, you can do some searching yourself with free accounts. So you can always try that out and see whether or not that meets what it is you're looking for. All right, so you'll note here on the side, you can either search for organizations or for people. So if you're just wanting to search by name or keyword, you can just do that here on the front. So we'll look for people. These are board members who've been shared by organizations, staff that might have been listed as kind of, associated with the organization on the 990, any kind of people that are shared with a particular organization. So if you're searching a person, it will come up through the lens of the organization they're affiliated with. Organizations, of course, will bring up the profiles that may be linked with the name as a keyword. Or you can build slightly more complicated searches. So if we go into search from up here, you have several different kinds of filters. So if I initially just wanted to see all the tax-exempt organizations in the state of Illinois, it will auto search as I go. You'll note here, we have nearly 120,000 results. One of the things to generally always do if you are searching in Guidestar is under organization to go down here to exclusions. So if you're not wanting to see kind of historic data, you can immediately exclude any organization as considered defunct or revoked. You'll note that changed the total by rather a lot, from nearly 120 to just under 73,000 results. Still way too many to look through. So again, organization also very, very easy to search by seals. So if you wanted to just see organizations that had them, you could do that very quickly. So if you are with a free account, I believe you can narrow by city and state, but not any of these others. With organization, I know you can still sort by seal of transparency and subject area. I'm not sure any of the others apply though. And I don't believe you can use any of the financial filters if you are on a free account. Right. If you were looking for organizations of a specific size, either by revenue, expenses, or assets, you're also able to do that on a professional subscription. Right, so let's see how many organizations in Illinois have a platinum level badge. Just offhand, 368. So fair number, but very small percentage of total organizations in Illinois, remembering that previous nearly 73,000. So you'll note, kind of looking at the organization, that the search list itself gives you a little bit of information about them, logos they have uploaded, information from, financial stuff. If you wanted to see a quick charity check, really that mainly just double checks that they are current in the kind of IRS sorts of systems. So if we go into an organization's profile, so you'll note this is what I had snipped as an image for that slide. You'll see their badge, their name. They have another name that you might know them under, their location, their website, and again, that donate button that is right there. So if you wanted to do that, if you wanted to do a charity check, you can see that as well. Gives kind of the quick statement there. As I said, basically this just kind of pulls the basic details on, they're a public charity. They are in good standing, basic information. So since this is one where people have shared a lot of information about the organization, you have their mission, you have when they were established, you have, the subject areas they say they work in, all this kind of information here, populations they serve, all of that stuff. So as you go, their programs, they have some annual reports you can download if you wanted to. other kind of programs of theirs so that it's not too long to scroll through. Only one of them is expanded at a time. External reviews, so they have sharing some of those. That's their metric that would have helped them get a platinum badge, is having this external measuring metric. The video, their results. Again, this is some of the things that are going to be associated with that platinum level of things. You know, number of participants in their programs, number of children who have stable placements. You'll note it says here that the source is that this was self-reported by the organization, so you know where that information came from. Sustainable development goals, their goals and strategies. So you can expand any of these if you wanted to read them more in depth. Financial statements. It also gives you some nice little graphs on what those look like over time for the information that they have historically for the organization. Again, this is all more financial information, either pulled from 990s or from information shared by the organization. Operations, kind of their employer, or their CEO, number of employees. So this gives kind of information again about that. You can see people who are listed on generally 990s as, you know, what their salaries were. If those are things that were listed, as well as their board. They have shared basically their entire board practices, and then their organizational demographics. I was mentioning that's part of the gold level and something that is voluntary, whether or not you're going to share it. So you'll note here that they have said decline to stay on several of the options for their organization's leader. That they have not stating those. The only one that is there is the gender identity. Their CEO has, you know, stated that he is male and cisgender, but has declined to share a race, a sexual orientation, or disability status. Then again, for the board, for the staff, and for senior staff, we get the same sorts of kind of graphs. Again, this is then done kind of on a slightly more aggregated scale. The CEO, your ED, is the only person where it is shared on an individual level. So no information on orientation or disability from anybody. As I mentioned, while you do have to fill out that section, you do have the option to say we don't collect that or we are declining to share that. Right? Equity strategies, contractors, all of this. So if you are searching and you want to save information from an organization, you can have a PDF. This is also if you want to do this for your own organization once you've updated your profile. Well, my computer's not cooperating. It doesn't seem to want to load right at this moment. So I guess we'll leave that be. Usually that loads fairly quickly. There we go. So this is, since they have shared a lot of information, it is a 29-page report. You know, so there is always the same template. So if you wanted to download this about your own organization or about an organization you are searching and looking at, you are certainly able to do so there. And then you, of course, can save this PDF to something. Now, if, however, you are doing this on kind of a more landscape basis, so say you wanted to do kind of a larger sort of search. We searched, don't know why, calculator was in there as an option. So if you do a kind of basic search like this, you can then again use filters. And for organizations that are that have a subscription, you can then select, you can actually download all if you have done a very specific sort of search. You know, if you'd want organizations of a particular size who are serving, you know, in a particular subject area with a particular population, you can then download your entire search. Now, you'll note for our subscription, 5,000 records a month. That is, and a record is each individual organization's information. So if I were to do this, I would not actually be able to do this whole search because I only have this number, 4,676. records remaining, and this is 4,703. So that is something to keep in mind for your organization if you have a subscription, or if you're a forefront member and asking us to do a search. We have that as a monthly limit, and that has to cover searches we do for everyone. So please kind of keep that in mind if you ask us to do searching for you as well. But that is kind of how that works. If you do a download there, then you can have kind of an Excel file that has that is far less pretty than the PDFs, but it does have a lot of the basic information: their name, their categories, the basic kind of columns for financial statements, contact information, that sort of thing. So there's definitely a reason to do the downloads if you are doing a lot of the sort of searching. So with benefits for any particular organization on having a subscription, honestly, I would probably just look around a free version first to see if it looked useful. I would probably see if I could visit a library that had access to a professional version where I could search it at that location to see if the information looked like it would be very useful. There are definitely kind of ways to take a look around it to see what kind of information you get out of it before you made any kind of commitment to a subscription yourself. So I would definitely make sure to take some looking around to just play around with it, to try it out, to answer Sharon's question in the chat. So I'm not going to say specifically recommended or not for any particular organization, but I would definitely recommend making your free account, taking a look around what you can search there, seeing if you can visit some sort of institution or organization that allows people to visit and search it yourself. Again, if organizations, a forefront member, ask us to do a search for you and see what it looks like, and just kind of try it out in those ways to see what sort of data you're getting and see whether or not you feel it is good and worth having your own subscription. I hope that makes sense. So Jill asked what kind of search requests we typically see here in the forefront library. So Candid is the parent organization both for this database as well as Foundation Directory Online. So we tend to see far more requests for information from that, since we tend to see far more requests in general from operating nonprofits. And operating nonprofits are usually interested specifically in information about grant makers, and Foundation Directory Online is focused more specifically on grant makers, whereas Guidestar here is focused on everyone who is tax exempt. So generally, when we are doing a search in Guidestar, it is advisors who are kind of looking at a landscape view of things, occasionally funders who are interested in a particular type of organization. It is usually somebody doing a landscape type search where they're interested in, all of the nonprofits in a particular county, or they're interested in looking at who is involved in a very particular subject area in a particular place. That sort of thing is usually the kind of Guidestar request we get. Candid searches more broadly, we are far more likely to see what kind of grant maker is interested in funding the sort of work we're doing, which is a Foundation Directory Online search. So that's kind of where those fall out. Yeah. Thank you. All right, so there are any other questions? If there are questions, please feel free to ask them. I don't mind running a few minutes over if people have stuff they want to talk about. All right, thank you very much. All right, so thank you for attending. You can see our kind of contact info there for the library and for me, myself. But if nobody has any questions, well then, it is 11 o'clock and I hope everybody has a great day.